Good morning, everyone, and happy Red Squirrel Awareness Week. I'm Kay Haw from the UK Squirrel Accord, and I hope you're getting involved in the many Red Squirrel events taking place around the UK and sharing communications to raise awareness. Other important actions you can take are reporting your squirrel sightings and getting involved with community groups, organisations and projects delivering vital conservation efforts around the UK. More details on Red Squirrel Awareness Week, where to report sightings and how to get involved in other ways are on our website, www.squirrelaccord.uk. Today we have our annual UK Red Squirrel Conservation Update webinar to look at some of the fantastic work taking place in each of the devolved countries to protect our remaining red squirrel populations. And this year I'm joined by Katy Bell of Ulster Wildlife, Rebecca Clews-Roberts of Natural Resources Wales, Molly Frost of Lancashire Wildlife Trust and Gail Turney from Saving Scotland's Red Squirrels. After the presentations, we'll have a Q&A session, and to help me, I would ask you to please use the Q&A function of Zoom for posting your questions, and just use the chat function for any general discussions. Thank you. So now I will happily pass over to our first speaker, who is Becky, talking about Wales, and I will just...
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Is that working okay?
Yeah, I think I can see the first screen. Yeah, thank you very much. So Kay's going to kindly scroll through my slides. We had a few technical problems with my talk this morning, so thank you for that. And yes, I'm Becky Clews-Roberts. I'm a specialist advisor for Natural Resources Wales, and I cover terrestrial mammals, so red squirrel amongst those. So I'm going to give an update for you today. So the next slide, please. And today's presentation, I'll be talking about the Wales Squirrel Forum and the 3 red squirrel groups that we have within Wales. So there's the Mid Wales Red Squirrel Partnership, Plakainog Red Squirrels Trust, and the Red Squirrels Trust Wales. Next slide, please. So the Wales Squirrel Forum, this was created as a way to enable the sort of red squirrel conservation, managing the impact of grey squirrel on trees and woodland ecosystems in Wales. And the membership comprises both statutory and non-statutory organisations, and including the squirrel groups as well. So the main functions listed there in the bullet points, so again, encourage their conservation and sustainable management of red squirrel populations in Wales, and to encourage effective grey squirrel management, reducing their impact on the population, the red squirrel population, as well as trees and woodland, and also to help sort of coordinate and support and monitor and assist with the Red Squirrel Conservation Plan for Wales and the Grey Squirrel Management Action Plan. These are both documents that were created for Welsh Government for everyone involved in red squirrel conservation in Wales. Next slide, please. So the actual Red Squirrel Conservation Plan itself was first formulated in 2009 and was also updated in 2018. And again, as it says on the screen there, the main reason for that conservation plan was to target to maintain the red squirrels at the current range at the time, and to maintain breeding populations at all 3 focal sites within Wales, but also to maintain the distribution of red squirrels within Wales. In 2018, the review looked at that, and again looking to maintain and enhance the range of red squirrels within the focal sites, and to enhance the size of the population where resources allowed beyond those focal sites where that was possible. Next slide, please. So where are those focal sites? This is the map of Wales, obviously. Hopefully you can just about see the legend maybe, but up in the northwest, we've got the Anglesey focal site, which, as you can see, is in green, and that is predominantly red squirrels. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a while, but they were eradicated. Unfortunately, we've had some incursion of grey squirrels recently, but I'll talk more about that in a minute. But where you see the other sites, you've got the Gwynedd there, that's red, that's orangey red, that borders Anglesey, so that is still part of the Anglesey focal site, but of course we've got grey squirrels and red squirrels there. And the other sites you've got to the east of there, you've got Clocainog Forest, and down in the middle there, you've got the Mid Wales focal site, which is predominantly around the Towie Forest, which comprises Welsh Government woodland estate as well as some private landowners. Okay, next slide, please. So the focal sites themselves, so Mid Wales, this is an upland forest complex, 15,000 hectares, and as I just said, it's under multiple ownership. So you've got Welsh Government Woodland Estate, which is managed by Natural Resources Wales, but you've also got private landowners there as well, private forestry owners. It's a real estimate, this, between 100 and 500 red squirrel population. They are being monitored, so the Mid Wales Red Squirrel Partnership, they are undertaking active monitoring. They've got numerous cameras and so on within the forest. They also undertake grey squirrel control, some of which is paid for by Natural Resources Wales. We have a small contract with them, but there's always more needed. And also the partnership will advise those forest managers and do a lot of community engagement. And so far within that focal site, there hasn't been any cases of squirrel pox that have been reported. Next slide, please. So the next focal site is Clocainog Forest up in the northeast of Wales, quite a lot smaller than the Mid Wales complex there. This is 5,500 hectares. Again, it's upland forest. And it's completely Welsh Government Woodland Estate, so it's managed by Natural Resources Wales, and it's using the continuous cover forestry method. It was classified as a reserve for red squirrels in 1992, and back then the squirrels were widespread. It was the main sort of area for red squirrels in Wales, if you like, the stronghold. But for some reason, as of yet unknown, the population has declined. So back in 2012, there was a trapping exercise carried out, and there were no red squirrels caught at all. So as a result of that, over various projects, there's been reinforcement of the red squirrels, and in the last 8 years, there's been approximately 40 individuals that have been released. Grey squirrel management is ongoing, and also as part of the cameras that are there, we often record pine marten on those cameras. Next slide, please. So the local red squirrel group there is called the Clocainog Red Squirrels Trust. So they support the project through monitoring and management. I think they've got something like 80 or 90 cameras in the forest, which they go out and monitor. Here are some of our very dedicated volunteers. And this is one of the release pens, the release enclosures. So at the moment, we're halfway through the 5-year Magical Mammals project. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but Clocainog Red Squirrels Trust are one of the key partners. And as part of that 5-year project, reinforcement has been necessary. We had a review that was written back in 2021, like a 5-year review, and there was some modelling carried out within that review to show that if further if reinforcement was not continued, we would possibly be looking at an extinction. So the modelling showed that year 1, we needed to put 10 animals, and then year 4, 5, another 10 animals. So this is what we're working on at the moment. All of these animals are captive bred. We haven't done any translocation from other sites in Wales. Obviously been working very closely with Welsh Mountain Zoo, who hold the stud book, and Wildwood Trust, who provided some of the squirrels, as well as some of the private breeders. And it's really good news. Clocainog Red Squirrels Trust are starting to get reports now, more reports from members of the public who are seeing red squirrels, which just hasn't been the case for, many years, put it that way. So somebody quoted recently that after 16 years of living near Clocainog, not seeing any, they are now seeing them so much more now. So that's got to be a positive. Next slide, please. As part of the monitoring, these captive bred red squirrels, they are all chipped. That's part of the breeding programme, if you like. This unit that you can see here, it's a bit chewed. I think they need to replace it, but they're pretty expensive. But this is a remote frequency ID panel, so it's designed as a feeder, and as the animal goes in, enters through, it lifts the lid and it will read the chip that's inserted in the back of the neck, tiny sort of grain of rice sized chip that captive bred animals have, and that enables Clerkenwell Red Squirrels Trust to monitor those red squirrels that have been released. Next slide, please. And this is, again, a few more images that Clerkenwell Red Squirrels Trust forwarded on. At the very forefront there, this is Caro. She is the ranger, the Red Squirrel Ranger for the Magical Mammals Project, and she's been running lots of events through the season. Next slide, please. Here are some of those events. Lots of all the country shows and stalls. And over on the right-hand side, this is a wonderful poetry and photography exhibition that the group put on in a local museum. And Caro wanted me to say that she couldn't come to the talk today. She's on holiday, but she's enjoyed talking to the local people at these village shows. And so many were interested in hearing about the increase in the numbers of the red squirrels. But she's also actively recruiting new volunteers, which is fantastic. And the project has also gained a lot of media coverage recently. They've had an article on BBC Countryfile, and also Yolo Williams from Spring Watch, you may know, he visited the site and did a piece for his Yolo's River Valleys. So these media coverage is excellent to boost awareness and generate further support. Next slide, please. This was something that took a bit longer than we thought it might take, but this is a wonderful new interpretation panel that we've managed to create and install within Clerkenwell Forest at a particularly an area where there's a lot of visitor footfall. So it's absolutely fantastic. It sort of shares the history and the background of the local red squirrel population. There's links on there to the local group, Clerkenwell Red Squirrels Trust. So we're just sort of hoping that longer term it will inspire visitors to learn a bit more and report any further red squirrel sightings. So we're very pleased to have that put in place. Next slide, please. So the next focal site, or the third focal site rather, is Anglesey. So this is where Red Squirrels Trust Wales operate from. And as I mentioned earlier, they did successfully eradicate those grey squirrels from the whole of Anglesey back in 2013. But unfortunately, there have been some re-incursions. There was maybe 3 or 4, I think, back in 2015-16. And currently, I think they've managed to capture something like 20 plus. So they will get across. They will actually swim. Some of you may know grey squirrels, I think reds as well, will swim short distances, so they can get across the Menai Strait onto Anglesey. But they've got a fantastic, everybody on Anglesey is proud of their red squirrels. So if anybody does see a grey squirrel, it will get reported straight away. With this reinforcement back in 2013 or eradicating the grey squirrels, they did increase the population with some reinforcement, bringing some captive bred animals in. But back then there was only about 40 left, so it was important to do that to avoid any genetic bottlenecking. But they reckon there's something in the region of 800 or so on the mainland now. 800 or so on Anglesey, plus a few on the mainland as well. So squirrel pox is a constant concern, of course. There had been cases recorded on the mainland, which is just bordering the islands, so it could get across onto the island. And in that Gwynedd population in 2021, they think they potentially lost about 70 to 80% of the red squirrel population there due to squirrel pox. So it is a very big threat, put it that way. As part of Red Squirrels Trust Wales, they also released some pine marten. This was a sort of a separate project, if you like, but again, working with zoos, captive bred animals. And of course, we know that there's evidence to show that pine marten will prey on grey squirrel. So it could be an important part of that control element. And they also undertake research, community engagement, of course, as do all the other red squirrel groups. Next slide, please. So as part of the Magical Mammals project, as well as Caro over in Clerkenwell, we've got James on Anglesey and Gwynedd. So he carries out a lot of well-being and other types of events. And there's just a few photos of the things that he's been doing. Some drag beats festival at Treborth Botanical Gardens, and the Coleg Menai College Menai doing lifelong learning department. So he did lots of events, about 17 events between April and June. I'm sure there's been more since then as well. And as well as that, the Red Squirrels Trust Wales is the Magical Mammals project lead. They've also created 20 newsletters. All of these are available from the website if you wanted to have a look at some of the work they've been doing. And the next slide, please. Just showing again that they do a monthly session at Active Woods. So bringing people in to talk about red squirrels and do some activities regarding all to do with red squirrels. Next slide, please. So Red Squirrels Trust Wales again. So these grey squirrels continue to be found on the island. But they are carrying out research into that. They're not just getting rid of the grey squirrels. They want to try and understand more about what's going on. So those animals that were captured and culled in 24 are part of a study into the genetics to just see how related those animals were, to understand a bit more about where these squirrels are coming from and so on. And they also wrote a short communication managing the squirrel pox, a threat to red squirrels, and that was in the veterinary record 2025. So yeah, there's lots of work going on there, but they're also collecting blood samples as well from those grey squirrels, and they're liaising with the other red squirrel groups, Clochynog, Red Squirrels Trust and Mid Wales, who are also collecting blood for grey squirrels to undertake further study and parallel study between the focal sites. Next slide, please. What other things that they've been involved in? So between the 1980s and the current day, they've actually collected and stored 300 red squirrel bodies. Okay, so these are mostly from Anglesey. They do have, unfortunately, a lot of roadkill on Anglesey because, you know, it's only 4% forested Anglesey. So there's a lot of roads that those squirrels have to cross, unfortunately. So they, you know, again, it's not just, oh, there's a dead red squirrel, let's learn from it and use the body if we can. So they've been undertaking a full genome study, looking at how the translocation that they carried out in the past is being successful. And also, I'll talk a little bit more about this second bullet point in a bit. But they're working with us for a stable isotope study, looking at the diet of squirrels. Also, Red Squirrels Trust Wales have got a new website with a live webcam. I tend to have a look at that each day. So do have a look on their website to have a look at live red squirrels. This is just a capture, a screen grab of one of those live cam shots. And they've also been undertaking various sorts of evening webinars and talks, including talks on that stable isotope analysis and the DNA work as well. Next slide, please. And when I put this slide together, they were just about to looking to release the book, but I think it's now ready. So every 5 years or so, Red Squirrels Trust Wales will lead on creating a book about red squirrel conservation. They'll liaise with all the red squirrel groups throughout the UK and ask them to feed back with their updated stories and what's worked well, what hasn't worked well, so that anybody reading that, you know, will be able to learn a bit about red squirrel conservation and how to go forward. One final slide from me, please. So just a little bit about the group work. I've intimated a little bit about how the 3 red squirrel groups are working with NRW as well. But we recently undertook some DNA work, which was just for North Wales, actually. And it was a fascinating project. It was working with SETU, the South East Technological University, and we managed to send them 70 samples, red squirrel samples, for them to undertake a DNA study on them. They managed to find 3 unique haplotypes to the study. And what we're now looking to do is a phase 2, and including Mid Wales Red Squirrel Partnership within this phase 2 as well, and possibly funding a student, an MSc student who will work with the 3 groups with one of these bento lab kits. So you would actually go into the field and take the sample and then store it straight away in the bento lab kit. So what we were finding with the 70 samples that we'd got, they'd been stored for however long, and then they were transported across to Ireland and so on. So some of the DNA does actually degrade over time, but if you've got this bento lab kit, it will keep it fresh. So you should be able to get 100% accuracy out of it. So we have got funding for that project. We're just waiting on a few final bits. That should be good. The stable isotope analysis group work as well. So this was looking at one of the reasons why those red squirrels are perhaps or have declined in Clocaenog Forest and perhaps aren't colonising the whole of the forest as quickly as we would like. So we're looking at a diet study, so hence stable isotope analysis of their diet. So we did a phase 1 and it did show that they were very dependent on fungi in particular, but also the supplementary feeding that the group give. So we just want to get a little bit more of an angle on what else they're feeding on and whether there is enough, natural food items in the forest for them. And that's going to be working this time with a comparative with a site on Anglesey as well. So that should be good. We've been having talks with the 3 groups as well about future funding. So Magical Mammals Finish has got a couple of years left. So we need to really think about future funding for the future there. Also, finally, over the last 3-4 years, we've been able to undertake some very detailed studying on abundance and habitat modelling. So we had that work carried out on the Anglesey focal site and for Clocaenog, and we've just about got the money now to start for Mid Wales as well. So really important research there on what's going on in those sites. And that's me. I've got one final slide just saying thank you. So thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Becky. Yes, the book is published. The book is published, and I do have a link to it somewhere, so I'll try and find it and put it in the chat. And now I'll pass over to Gail in Scotland.
Thank you. Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Gail Turney, Programme Manager of Saving Scotland's Red Squirrels. It's a privilege for me to present some of the fantastic progress across Scotland for red squirrel conservation. A little about Saving Scotland's Red Squirrels, or SSRS as it's known. It's a partnership project led by Scottish Wildlife Trust and supported by the Scottish Government's Nature Restoration Fund. So I'm sure you'll agree that red squirrels are undoubtedly one of the UK's most iconic and beloved species and our only native squirrel species. There's many people throughout the country who've never seen a red squirrel. They were once widespread throughout the country, but red squirrel populations have declined following the introduction of grey squirrels from North America by the Victorians, and many populations have since been replaced by grey squirrels. So grey squirrels outcompete red squirrels for food and habitat, and they also spread the deadly squirrelpox virus. So around 80% of the UK's remaining red squirrels are found in Scotland. However, without sustained conservation action, they're still at risk of being driven to extinction. So wildlife conservation is a hugely collaborative endeavour, bringing together the skills and experiences of conservation researchers, field-based practitioners and volunteers, as well as requiring the support of local communities and stakeholders. So in Scotland, some of the key activities for red squirrel conservation this year include the reintroduction of red squirrels to the Northwest Highlands, the near removal of grey squirrels in Aberdeenshire, management to reduce the spread of squirrelpox virus to red squirrels and to protect the current red squirrel populations. improving the understanding of red squirrel health, monitoring to inform where to target our collaborative efforts for red squirrel conservation, and in our priority locations to focus our efforts where grey and red squirrel populations overlap. So here in Aberdeen, along the Highland line and across the central belt to Fife, as well as in the south of Scotland. So just in case you can't see the key, these red areas are the range of red-only squirrel populations. The darker blue is a mix of red and grey, which is where our focus is. And then the grey area is grey only. And then the green is, are areas of forested area. So SSRS maintains records of red and grey squirrel numbers and distribution in Scotland. This year, so far, we've received over 11,000 sightings from the public. And while this data doesn't inform us specifically of the population sizes, it's incredibly helpful to inform SSRS staff, volunteers and partners of how the distribution of each species is changing over time, and also where our efforts should be prioritised. So this week coincides to mark the Great Scottish Squirrel Survey. However, sightings of both species can be reported year-round via our website. And we're very grateful to everyone who takes the time to get outside, report sightings of red and grey squirrels, as they're vital to the work that we carry out. So Saving Scotland's Red Squirrels, the Eastern Lowlands Red Squirrel Group and the Red Squirrel Forum for South Scotland all work in those key priority areas across the country to tackle the threat of the invasive grey squirrel. With the support of partners, landowners and local volunteers, we monitor squirrel numbers across Scotland, we manage the impact of squirrel pox, and we help to combat the spread of grey squirrels in those key strategic areas. And here's some of the activities that we've done this year to address this. So through the research this year by the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland, we understand that the island population of grey squirrels here in Aberdeen wasn't connected to other populations in Scotland, so they're genetically isolated. However, this population and this route is a gateway to the red-only population of the Highlands and Grampians, and as such, it's a priority area. So grey squirrels spread throughout Aberdeen and the surrounding areas, originating from only 10 or so zoo escapees in the 1970s. So when SSRS formed in 2019, there were almost no squirrels left in Aberdeenshire. This year, through the work of SSRS, only a handful of grey squirrels have been sighted, whilst red squirrels recover across Aberdeenshire. And this year we had sightings recorded even as near as the city's main shopping centre. This reflects the amazing partnership work with Aberdeen City Council, our dedicated volunteers and the residents of Aberdeen who've really demonstrated just how much they care about red squirrel conservation. Just staying in Aberdeen, this year the Royal Zoological Society of Scotland Wild Genes Lab carried out genetic analysis to provide SSRS with further insights on the Aberdeen grey squirrel population. Using DNA samples that were gathered by SSRS, they developed a genetic test that can determine the sex of grey squirrels, as well as, in summary, developing a genetic fingerprint, which can be used to identify individuals or for the identification of individual grey squirrels. And this could be really valuable in determining population size. Another way to monitor and inform our work is through hair sample analysis. Here we collect hair samples from a network across key locations, and we have hundreds of these feeder boxes which are monitored by staff or volunteers. So the hair samples are collected from the feeder boxes, and then they're analysed through a microscope to determine whether they've been visited by red squirrels, grey squirrels, or other species such as pine marten. So this enables us to respond in different ways. For example, we can use the monitoring to help prevent migration of grey squirrels north into the Highlands and Grampians, or into any area of healthy, viable population of red squirrel. So for these areas, we respond quickly to the identification of grey squirrels, and we call this rapid response monitoring. Where the grey squirrel densities are higher, the monitoring informs us of where our efforts should be focused, and we call this operational monitoring. So this year, adding to the existing rapid response networks in Aberdeen and in the Mearns and North and East Angus, we've expanded our rapid response networks into 4 new regions across the Highland Line, which moving forward will be further expanded to enable a wider spread of monitoring across that Highland Line. All monitoring records are entered into an online database, which gives us an indication of the presence or absence of grey or red squirrels, and it helps us track the changes in population distribution of both red and grey squirrels in the area. Apologies, this map is a little bit out of date, but in South Scotland this year, spring surveys were undertaken for the first time since, I think, 2019, recording squirrel data in up to 50 tetrads across the south of Scotland. This was undertaken by the collaborative volunteer groups of the Red Squirrel Forum for South Scotland, and the results are being analysed by the Red Squirrel Recovery Network. So over time, this data will help inform population trends in the south, and it could also be related to squirrel pox monitoring. So in the last year, through the monitoring that's been undertaken in the Highland Line, we've observed a number of new areas to be grey squirrel free for the first time in decades. And these areas are across the north of the Highland Line, as well as a second year of no grey squirrel records in the North Mearns area. And these observations of no grey squirrels have been coupled with the return of red squirrels in this area, which is really positive in our aim to increase the range of red squirrel distribution. In addition, in the south of Scotland, we've noticed a recent influx of reports and observations of healthy red squirrel populations seen for the first time in new areas. So this is very recent news. We're not sure of the reason. So it's just observation based only, but it has been noted across several priority areas for red squirrels. So in these new populations, we're also seeing a lot of young. It is a mast year this year, so there's an abundance of acorns as well as sweet chestnut and berries and fungi, which may have aided this observation. And we normally find that with a mast year, that usually indicates a successful following year for red squirrel. While this is great news, we must remain vigilant because this will also be reflected for the grey squirrel population, so there may be an influx there as well. Going to less positive news, squirrel pox, I'm sure you know, is a virus. It's carried by grey squirrels, which doesn't affect them, but it can be lethal when passed to red squirrels, and it does pose a major threat to Scotland's populations of red squirrel. The Royal Dick Veterinary School at the University of Edinburgh continues to run post-mortem disease surveillance project for red squirrels, as well as reviewing diagnostic techniques for pox diagnosis to make it more efficient. So here's how you can help with this. In Scotland, if you see a sickly red squirrel, you can report the sighting to SSRS or email Scotland Wildlife Trust a photo. Or if you do come across a dead red squirrel, you can send it to the Royal Dick Veterinary School for analysis, and this will support their research. And details are on the SSRS website. In the last year to July, 33 deceased squirrels were tested under post-mortem, and 3 of those red squirrels, all located in the south of Scotland, were recorded as positive with the virus. And throughout 2024, for a full year's worth of records, there were 6 positive cases of red squirrels. Thanks to the efforts of the volunteer groups and squirrel officers, those cases were contained locally and didn't spread further, but they do have localised impacts. Across the Highland line, including Fife, samples are taken from grey squirrels for squirrel pox virus antibody testing. And the first case of squirrel pox virus north of the Central Belt occurred last year in Dunfermline. And there's so in this area across the Highland line, there's concern of it spreading north into the red-only population of the Highlands and the Grampians. So presently in Fife, there's a heightened concern of the spread of squirrel pox virus to the red squirrel populations. So here, through the antibody testing, from the small sample size that's been taken in this last year, 25% of those samples were found to carry the virus, and that's in grey squirrels. So we're aware more research is needed. This year, the University of Edinburgh held a squirrel health workshop, which was attended by 20 experts in squirrel monitoring and research from across Scotland. And they worked to identify key needs to enhance monitoring and research in squirrel health and disease for the UK. And the key needs that they identified were the formation of an expert squirrel research group, the creation of a centralised information hub, an enhanced population genomic and disease monitoring and sample acquisition, enhanced interdisciplinary working and research, so more collaborative working, as well as you'd expect, additional funding and resources to make it all happen. There have been advances in red squirrel research this year. The University of Edinburgh have been reviewing the causes of death in red squirrels received for post-mortem over the last decade, and they're currently in the process of preparing a manuscript for publication. They've also shown that red squirrels in Scotland and in the wider UK still harbour the leprosy bacteria, and they're hoping to develop this research further. Recent research by the vet school has explored the genetic structure of the Scottish red squirrel population, and they've revealed that it has a low genetic diversity. And this study has led to a larger scale genomic assessment of UK red squirrel populations. This was part of a PhD, and this PhD project is also investigating the genetic outcomes of selected red squirrel translocations in Scotland and in Wales, so as to maximise the genetic diversity in those translocated populations to maximise red squirrel health. So talking of red squirrel translocations, this brings us to Trees for Life, where since 2016, they've been working to reintroduce red squirrels to parts of the Northwest Highlands where they used to thrive. So far, they translocated 259 squirrels and established 13 new populations. This spring, Trees for Life released a further 12 red squirrels into the woodlands along the coast of the Glenelg Peninsula, bringing the local population there to 19. And this year, or this spring, they're also delighted to hear that red squirrels in the Drimmin release site had kits. So here, community involvement and citizen science have been key to the project. The local people have been getting involved in each release and contributing supplementary feeding and monitoring through camera traps and sightings. And none of that work would have been possible without the support of their volunteers. So that just leaves me to say thank you very much for listening, and do feel free to contact us.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Gail. Great news with the Scottish survey, and I do encourage everyone to record your sightings if you're in Scotland and you're spotting squirrels. Thank you. And now just go to Molly. Look at England, mostly.
Sort of.
Thanks, Molly. You started the slideshow. If you just go to display settings and switch it over again. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, there's always one, isn't there?
No, it's fine. Yeah, that looks great.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, thanks. So I just want to start off by thanking everybody who has sent through slides for this update. I do have a lot to get through, so apologies if I do kind of skip over a few things. I mentioned that although this is the England update, because of the Red Recovery Network, I will be including some information on Southern Scotland as well, just to confuse everybody. Okay. Not really to do with England at all, but starting off with all of the UK and the squirrel distribution. Kay sent this through, and we do have a new map, which is fantastic. So this builds on the previous maps by the Red Squirrel Survival Trust, and was created by the Mammal Society for the UK Squirrel Accord. This uses verified data from a range of sources, including Red Squirrels Northern England, which collect data from red squirrel community groups. So as we can see from these maps, that it shows the changes over time. So the previous maps we had before showed what happened from 1945 through to 2010. But the new data that we have now encompasses data from 2017 to 2022. So you can see what the current situation looks like. And whilst there are some very good wins there are also concerns about further grey squirrel incursions into some of the remaining red squirrel areas. Okay. So thank you to Natural because they have helped commission a project for the UK Squirrel Accord, which is the England Red Squirrel Recovery Strategy. So this was a 2-year project that was launched that involved researchers and Kayo at the Zoological Society of London. And over the years, they held a lot of workshops with various different stakeholders to try and do this research into how we can build a recovery strategy for red squirrels in England. The final report isn't quite ready yet, but it will be published very, very soon. So do keep a lookout for that so that you can get a bit more information on that. And the idea of this strategy is that it will provide valuable information to guide actions across England, and hopefully a better view for red squirrels in the future. So thank you to everybody that has been involved in that, and a special thanks to Beth and Kayo, who have been leading the research. More thanks to funding, it's time to the Commission who have funded a UK Squirrel Accord project. So it's currently funded until March 2026, and it's a project that covers Yorkshire, Lancashire. So the UK Squirrel Accord have got 2 officers. So we've got Julie and David, who are covering those areas. And the aim of this project is to expand grey squirrel management across those regions to better protect red squirrels and trees from the damage of grey squirrels. So far, they have done some fantastic work. They've engaged over 2,000 stakeholders across more than 450,000 hectares, which is just incredible. New red squirrel colonies have been found, and of course they've had some excellent feedback because of the work that they've done. They have established 6 new community groups. You can see all of their lovely logos here. So if anybody does live in these areas and wants to get involved, please do reach out to the squirrel officers. Their email is just at the top of this slide. Or you can head over to the UK Squirrel Accord website as well for more information on how to get involved. So those new community groups clean up the well-established squirrel conservation groups that we've already got in Cumbria and Northumberland. Is the work in that still a significant amount of red squirrel conservation, and they always welcome more support. So if you're a little bit further up in those areas and you want to get involved, head over to the Northern Red Squirrels website for more information on that. Yeah, fantastic job. Okay, so staying up north a little bit now. I've had an update through from Red Squirrels Northern England about the spring survey. So Gail did sort of mention this earlier in her presentation. And so for those of you that don't know about the Red Squirrels Northern England survey, they've been running it for a number of years now, and it involves a lot of different community groups that do standardised monitoring. But what's different about this year is because of the Red Squirrel Recovery Network, it has now encompassed some of those southern Scotland areas. So thank you very, very much to the community groups that have got involved with that. Overall, there were 232 tetrads that were surveyed for 2025, and 39 of those were in the southern Scotland area. So this year, the overall area that is being surveyed has increased because we've got southern Scotland as well. However, just a note that the number of actual tetrads that were surveyed is actually lower than the 2024 number that we had. So that might reflect in some of the results that are coming out from the data. So this that improved. So the red squares are areas that grey are where just grey squirrels were found, orange is where both species were, and the white ones are where none were found. So you can see just up there, similar to the map that Gail showed earlier, that encompasses that southern Scotland area. So in terms of the actual results, these are still being analysed, so it might change a little bit in the final report. But overall, there was a 41.8% of red squirrel occupancy in the areas surveyed and a 64.2% occupancy for grey squirrels. Now, what that looks like in context of the trend from last year, so from 2024, both red and grey squirrel occupancy has decreased. As I did mention, the number of tetrads is also lower, so that could be the reason, but they are still analysing these results, so we're not quite sure at the moment. But the red squirrel occupancy has fallen by 10.2% compared to 2024, and grey squirrel occupancy has fallen by 4.9% compared to 2024. So do keep a lookout for the final report so you can get more detailed information about what's happening with that survey. On to Merseyside and Lancashire. So it's nice to have some positive news for once in this area. So we've had population movement. So we've had new sightings of red squirrels in the Aintree and Knowsley area, which are a little bit further south. And then also in several woodlands across West Lancashire as well, so up north, which is just fantastic. I believe that's because there's been an increase of engagement, especially the recovery network, which I'll come on to in a little while. We've also had a lot of engagement with those landowners, so getting permissions for grey squirrel control and monitoring more sites as well. We just had some sad news about squirrel pox in the Scottish update, but I've got a bit of good news about our area. So there has actually been a reduction in the number of squirrel pox cases in the Lancashire and Merseyside area. Now, it's thought that possibly a couple of the reasons that this might have happened. Historically, we have struggled a lot with squirrel pox, and we have lost a significant amount of red squirrels to that. But we've been really working quite hard on educating the public on the dangers of supplementary feeding and how to do that safely. But also there has been a reduction in the density of red squirrels, particularly in those formerly pine wood type areas. Now that sounds like a bad thing, but historically we had a very, very high density of red squirrels in that area, an unnaturally high density. And as happens with all types of disease, once you get that population crowding, the disease runs rampant through that population. So we think just being able to get back to more natural, lower density levels of red squirrels, encouraging them to move out into other woodlands, has helped get the squirrel pox virus under control a little bit. And so that's some really good news. We've also had an increase in the number of sightings that are being reported to the Lancashire Wildlife Trust, which is great. This is probably down to the fact that we have a new website form, which we're very proud of. We're very happy about it. It's a lot easier for us to manage in terms of the data, but a lot easier for people to report as well. They can just plot their sighting directly onto the map. And we've also had a lot of support from landowners in the area. So National Trust have put up some signs for us on reporting their sightings. And we've also established the Sefton Coast Red Squirrel Steering Group, which are helping with that engagement as well. And then just finally, I just put this in because he's very cute. This is a red squirrel that has recently been rehabilitated by us and released back. His name is Houdini. So if you want to follow his story, we're doing a little social media story about him at the moment. Isle of Wight, they've got some very exciting news. So the Isle of Wight Red Squirrel Trust are celebrating 20-year anniversary, which is amazing. We've got lots of celebratory events, particularly in their brand new woodland. So in spring 2025, they bought a woodland called Howes Wood. Now this area was previously an ancient woodland, and then it was chopped down to have a plantation of Lawson cypress. So what they're doing now is they're restoring it back to a broadleaf woodland with some cone-bearing trees in there as well. So they've started off this planting with hazel coppice this season, and then they'll move on to the other species as they go along. If you want to find out more about this, they've got some lovely blog posts. I was having a read through them yesterday. They're really nice. So they're documenting this journey. You can head over to their website. And also this sign is really lovely. So this has been designed by Kate Northover for the Isle of Wight Red Squirrel Trust. And it's actually, I've got some notes here that it's available for purchase, but by collection only. So if you're in the Isle of Wight and you want one of these signs, please do get in touch. Or if you want a trip down to the Isle of Wight to go and get one, please do get in touch with the Trust on information on how you can get that. Move on now to talk about the Red Squirrel Recovery Network. So this is a brand new project that has just officially started this year. It's a collaborative project with all of these different organisations logoed up here. And the idea of the Red Squirrel Recovery Network is to build on the conservation efforts of the last 20 years and lay the foundation for red squirrel recovery. So this is a map that has been produced to show those key areas. So as I mentioned before, it is a cross-border project as well. It encompasses all of the northern red squirrel regions, but also those southern Scotland regions as well. So it's operating at a super landscape scale. So just for context, we've got Merseyside and Lancashire down isolated at the bottom there, and then we've got Cumbria, Northumberland, and then southern Scotland. So this is just a bit of a timeline. So although I said the project started this year, it has been a long time coming. So we've done a lot of work to get it to where it is now. So in February 2023, the initial application went into the National Lottery Heritage Fund. And then in June 2023, we had a decision announced that we were successful in getting our development phase. So that was a 1-year funded project to be able to develop the full Red Squirrel Recovery Network. So in November 2024, we submitted that round 2 application. And then what felt like a very, very, very long time later, in March 2025, we were delighted to find out that we had been successful in gaining that funding. So this year, off after our permission start process was completed, we started the project for real. So it's a 5-year project, so it will run until summer 2030. And there's lots and lots of different ways that people can get involved. I kind of flip to the development phase. As part of that, we needed to come up with an idea of what the existing squirrel conservation in those areas is. Now, I do appreciate that this map doesn't actually encompass all of the regions that are covered in the project, but it was led by Red Squirrels Northern England, and they just wanted to get a bit of a snapshot of what the existing effort was in terms of volunteer effort, landowner engagement, and all of the conservation activities that were going on, because then we could develop a plan on which areas were doing very, very well and which areas required a little bit more support. So the outcomes of the Red Squirrel Recovery Network are to increase and diversify the number of people involved, especially through active volunteering. We want to make sure that volunteers have the required skills and knowledge to be able to access methods of squirrel management. We want more landowners and stakeholders playing an active role in red squirrel conservation. And we want to be able to improve data collection and monitoring so that we can measure the success of this project and other projects in the future, and also identify where we are still facing some challenges. So as part of that initial pre-project volunteer engagement work, they were all asked what they thought the biggest challenges were to their current groups. And the biggest thing that came out was actually awareness of threats. So they just felt that the communities that they were working with and that the wider UK population just didn't really understand what the threats were to red squirrels. So this kind of leads us to a huge part of the project, which is increasing awareness. So throughout the development phase, we had a lot done on creating a communications proposal. So trying to understand the right way to engage the local communities, but also the wider UK red squirrel conservation. And we came up with the Don't Be Shy campaign, which was launched this Red Squirrel Awareness Week. Now do have a dedicated communications officer who is going to be leading on this. The idea of Don't Be Shy is a bit of a play on words, thinking about the elusive nature of red squirrels, but also their curious nature. And it's to encourage people to really stand up for red squirrels. So don't be shy about it. Advocate for them. They don't have a voice, so you have to be their voice for them, and get involved. So this is just an idea of what the Red Squirrel Recovery Network looks like in terms of the project management. A little bit confusing. So the overall project is managed by the Ulster Wildlife Trust. So Mike Denbury is our programme manager. And then we do have some centralised roles that are working across the entire project, such as our communications officer, which I mentioned before, finance and compliance, and data and information officers. And then each region will have a project officer, a community engagement officer, a ranger that does grey squirrel control, and then we'll also have some early career project assistant roles that will be coming out in the upcoming months and years. So do have a look out for some of those jobs. I'm going to do a shameless plug now and say that the Lancashire Wildlife Trust Ranger job is currently live. So if you live in that region and you're interested, please do head over to our website for more details on that. Okay, so sticking with the theme of learning and engagement, another branch of the project will be working with secondary schools to develop resources for GCSE, A-level and Scottish hires. So this is being supported by the University of York, the UK Squirrel Accord and Knowsley Safari. And the aim of this is to establish a toolkit that will be published and available for teacher-led activities. And it will have red squirrels as a case study, and it will include things such as debating all sides of the argument, including information about squirrel science careers and that practical conservation management as well. So as I mentioned, we really want people to get involved. The idea of this project is that we don't just ask people to get involved, we actually give them the tools to be able to do that. And one of the best tools is money. So we do have two different funding streams available through this project. And the first one is the Volunteer Group Equipment Fund. So if you are an existing volunteer group that is working in red squirrel conservation in these areas, you can apply for up to £1,000 per group per year for those 5 years. And this is specifically for the equipment that you will need to carry out those red squirrel conservation duties. So mileage is not included in that. This scheme isn't quite ready to launch yet, but it should be ready by December. So if that is something that you're interested in, keep an eye out for that, and you can get in touch to find out more information on how to apply. The second fund that we have is the Community Grant Scheme. So we have £50,000 per year for the 5 years, and that is split between all of those project areas that I mentioned before. And this fund has two streams. So it's the micro grants, which is less than £500, and small grants, which is over £500. And the idea of the community grant scheme is to help community groups that may not already be involved in red squirrel conservation. It gives them a way in to access different things such as supporting experiences. Maybe that's going and visiting red squirrel areas to learn more about them, or engaging with the public, or right through to things such as habitat enhancement so that they can get red squirrels into their area. So applications will be open to all community groups, and these applications specifically will be supported by the community engagement officers and the project officers for the different regions. This should be available by December as well. So if you are interested in that, do keep an eye out for that and contact the relevant people. To finish off the last branch of this Red Squirrel Recovery Network is the Grey Squirrel Contraceptive. Now, as a disclaimer, I'm sure you've heard this lots and lots of times, it's not ready yet. So the oral contraceptive isn't ready yet. Some of the trials will be included in the Red Squirrel Recovery Network. So specifically what will be trialled is the species-specific feeding hoppers. And I would just like to make a note that the UK Squirrel Accord have funded the research of this up to date, and they are also providing the match funding to enable these landscape scale trials to be included in the Red Squirrel Recovery Network. So thank you very much. And this is a really exciting part of the project, and yeah, definitely something that's getting people talking. So we're excited to get this underway. Because once these landscape scale have been done, all that research can go into the registration of the contraceptive. So once that is all available, then we can roll that out. More to come. Okay, so just to sum up the aims of the Red Squirrel Recovery Network, by 2030, the aim is for red squirrel conservation to be more resilient because more people are involved. So, people are really at the heart of conservation, and the idea of this project is to let people know how they can get involved, but also give them the tools so that they are able to do that. So please do get in touch, read more about it if you are interested. I should stop talking now. So thank you very much. If you want more information about the Red Squirrel Recovery Network, please do contact via this email address here. And thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Molly. And I will definitely go online and follow Houdini now. It's great. And finally, our last speaker, Katy from Northern Ireland.
Is that working all right?
It's still coming through.
Oh.
But it says it started. Yeah, that's great.
You can see that? Okay, perfect. Okay, hello from Northern Ireland. I am Katy Bell and I work as Senior Conservation Officer for Ulster Wildlife. So we are the Wildlife Trust that covers the whole of Northern Ireland. So we have 20 nature reserves across the country. We bring people closer to nature and we save species. So we work both on land and sea, and the red squirrel is one of our key species that we work on our terrestrial species projects. So that's where my job comes in. So to start with a little bit of good news, this year we bought a new nature reserve. That's why our big number's up to 20 now rather than 19 when I spoke last year. We bought a 90-acre reserve in West Fermanagh. This is called Fadgin, that's how you say that. That comes from an old Irish word for stream. And this is basically a mix of species-rich grassland and hazel woodland. So obviously I'm talking about this for a reason. But we were able to get this from some money from the lottery fund, some money from the wildlife trusts, and then some from gifts and wills from our members. So an amazing achievement for us to be able to buy this. So when we found out there was a lot of hazel woodland here, obviously I was very keen to see if red squirrels were present in our nature reserve. So we got some cameras out, and within about a week we found red squirrels. So this is amazing to have these in one of our new nature reserves. We also found some pine marten as well. So pine marten and red squirrel both present at this site. It's an amazing site. It is kind of been left alone, some ancient woodland in there. So we're in the process of writing a management plan and making sure this population stays here. There's also marsh fertility in the species-rich grassland, so a really wonderful site that is now under our control. So last year I talked a bit about the 2024 survey, so we were kind of in the middle of it all, and we finished it now, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the results of that. So this is a survey we carry out across the whole of Northern Ireland every 2 years, and we monitor red squirrel, grey squirrel and pine marten. And this really, really important, this data, it's been going on, well, it was started by Dave Tosh. We took over in 2014, we took over in 2017. So basically this was like the 10th year of this survey. So really, really important data. It feeds into our strategy for Northern Ireland on kind of research and monitoring. So it's just important to get these long-term data sets, and it allows us to see any drastic changes in the kind of, and then in the 3 species of greys turned up somewhere they didn't used to be, or reds moving. So it really helps us inform that conservation on like a landscape scale as well as a local scale. So this is everywhere that was surveyed and represented by each organisation's logo. So 12 partners helped us with this, which was amazing. We managed to survey 221 woodlands. So such a huge effort. You can see there, like we got a big coverage across Northern Ireland, help with some of the squirrel groups, organisations like National Trust, WWT, and some of the councils. So that was really good. And thank you to Forest Service for facilitating the survey as well. So thousands and thousands of photos to go through, as you can imagine. Lots of red squirrels of all shapes and sizes and colours and everything, which was just lovely to see. We also got a lot of pine marten, so it's just a little snapshot of some of the photographs that we got. Now, at the minute, we're still doing this manually. We are investigating the use of AI tools to identify this and make our lives a bit easier, because it is unbelievably time consuming going through all these photos. So and the Red Squirrel team really consists of me and one other staff member, and we work in other species as well. So it would be really good. So we're investigating that to see if that can help us a bit to eliminate some of that time. We also get a load of other species on the camera, so it's lovely to see. And these records all go to our local data centre, so you can see everything there, from kind of a badger in the top left corner, a buzzard flying through the woodland. We get lots of deer, or some great spotted woodpecker, jay. Lots of nice things we get on the camera, so that's great. We can also report those as well. So what did we find? This is basically the red squirrels. So we recorded red squirrels in 70 woodlands in Northern Ireland. Now that's just great. And if we looked at that data 10 years ago, there was no way that red squirrels would be found in 70 woodlands. This is similar to 2022. So we're happy that red squirrels are kind of almost holding steady in these areas. That's not to say that they're not at risk, but they are holding steady. And if you look at the kind of bottom kind of left, there's a bit of like connectivity now, so this whole little strip going along, and kind of it's almost feeding in from the squirrels that are coming from the south of Ireland. So this is really nice, and we hope this will continue to happen and there'll be a bit more connectivity. So there's a lot going on here. They're kind of more still around the outskirts, but moving into the middle a bit more as well, which is really nice to see that they're not just isolated to the outskirts of the country. And just for context, this is everywhere we looked. So this is everywhere we looked for squirrels. And the pink and the red is where we actually found them. So obviously there's still some gaps. We didn't cover every single square in Northern Ireland, but we are working on trying to fill some of those gaps. But it's a really good representation of where these squirrels are. these squares represent new red squirrel sites that we got in 2024. So there was nine woodlands where we recorded red squirrels for the first time ever in the survey. This is very, very exciting. A couple of those can be explained. So the one, the bottom kind of right there, that's Castle Ward National Trust site. That was a red squirrel release, so we expected to find them there. But a few of these were kind of new to us. The ones in the middle to the west of Lough Neagh are indicative of the fact that we have a new red squirrel group there, the Mid-Ulster group. So we have more recording there. So that's very exciting. And a few of these are definitely red squirrel spread. So that's exciting. One of them was our peatland team out monitoring on one of their sites and found red squirrels in some wet woodland. So yeah, it's really, really nice to see red squirrels popping up in these new sites. This is our grey squirrel map. So a lot fewer than 2022 actually. Now this makes it look like there's no grey squirrels in kind of the west of the country. That's not, it's not correct, because obviously we're only surveying woodlands here. We're not surveying urban areas. So Fermanagh, the county of Fermanagh is actually grey squirrel free, but the whole of County Tyrone isn't. There are lots of greys in urban areas like Omagh, etc. But we have definitely seen a retraction of greys there. So we've been looking at that for a number of years, and the number of greys we're picking up in that county is decreasing. Now we think this is a bit of a mix of grey squirrel management and also the pine marten effect. So we can see them kind of moving back. Now we still have huge big source populations of greys in our urban areas, and there's still a threat, but there's kind of something positive going on here. This is our pine marten map, and as you can see, pine marten's kind of everywhere. I talked a bit about this before, and I talked about pine marten at the UK Squirrel Accord conference this year. We found them in 97 woodlands. Now that was a bit more, so it was 89 in 2022, so it's kind of going up every year. We're getting to the point, there's about a 46% chance if you put out a camera you'll find a pine marten now, so that's a bit crazy. And you can see they're all over the place. So I won't get too much into that relationship with squirrels and pine martens. There's lots to read out there, but what we've seen is positive impacts. We know that reds or pine martens can predate reds in an area, and they do, but they don't have an impact on them on a population level. They seem to have more of a positive impact. The two coexist very well when there's healthy woodlands and healthy connectivity. So the likes of Fermanagh, red squirrels and pine martens have coexisted there for lots and lots of years, and we have lots of evidence on the feeders of reds and pine martens going to same feeders, but reds being very aware that there's pine martens there. They're aware of the threat. So yeah, just to show the increase in this over the years, so from 2017 to 2024 there, and whenever we release anything, I guess some people always say, oh, it's just because you're looking more, but actually in 2017 and 2024 we had the exact same survey effort, so the same number of woodlands were kind of looked at. So there's the same effort. So it's not that we're looking more. When we started this 10 years ago, it was definitely that we were looking more because they hadn't really been surveyed, and camera traps are a great way to find them. But this is the same survey effort, so they are just on a bit of a natural increase. We do get asked all the time why. There's been no reintroductions in Northern Ireland. This is a natural spread. It's just something that's going on. There isn't that many ways to explain it. Obviously, pine marten persecution has stopped a number of years ago, and they were added to the wildlife order. But yeah, it's really, really nice to see, and it's something we are looking at. Whether they will have a crash again or what, we're not sure, but also they're not the silver bullet. They're not going to be the thing to solve the grey squirrel problem, because they're not going to get to certain numbers. They have to be at high densities to impact greys, and this isn't going to happen in the likes of urban areas where there's not going to be many pine martens. So that's just always something to be aware of, and we have to be aware of the conflict that comes with the spread of a predator, them eating chickens and nesting in people's houses. So it's something we have to be aware of, but there's very good guidance out there on that as well. So just in summary, Our red squirrel spread is similar to 2022. We're still seeing that it's still fragmented, but it's getting there. So we're happy about it. It's not bad. Grey squirrel populations are still strong in the east, but not as strong in the west. So we are seeing something slightly positive there too. And pine martens are still spreading to more woodlands. So that's a brief summary. We have a report of this on our website. I'll put a link in the chat afterwards if anyone would like to go into more detail and look a bit more at the map. So the next survey we will be carrying out is in 2026, and our preparations already underway. It feels like we just finished the last one, but we'll be kicking off again in January. And we've had some lovely youth groups and things making feeders for us, which is very nice. So we're all stocked up for the new survey. We're trying to plan for this to be an all-Ireland survey. So the All-Ireland survey happened in 2012 and 2019. So we're due one in 2026. So hopefully we'll be able to collaborate with NUI Galway on that. We're trying to figure that out. And this, you've seen this map before, but I just wanted to show it to you to have a little focus on Ireland here, because the reason we want to do it as an all-Ireland survey is, that map is almost a bit shocking. When we first did it, it kind of looked wrong. We were like, it can't be all red, but the data is right. We really want to almost confirm that in 2026 and see, is it really still like that? Is there any work that needs done, or is it still going the right way? So yeah, it looks very good from a point of view of Ireland as a whole. And for reference, that whole middle area of Ireland is where grey squirrels were introduced originally and are now gone from the area. So it is very interesting, something we need to keep looking at. Oh, as well as our survey, we collect records as well. So we have a recording database. So this we basically share these records with CEDAR, which is the main recording database, and with the Northern Ireland Environment Agency. But we kind of take these records and it's really good in real time for us to see what's going on. So this is just a snapshot of the records now. So this is what it looks like as of last week. And you can see there a nice little spread of reds there in the west. Now, what we think is going on is that we are getting a lack of grey squirrel records. I think people are more likely to record reds than greys. And so this week, as part of Red Squirrel Awareness Week, we've been doing a bit of awareness raising and a bit of a call for records. So especially in the likes of County Tyrone and County Armagh, we think there are greys that people just aren't recording. So we really want to get a proper snapshot of what's going on. So we've had thousands of records in. It's been really successful. And it also feeds into our survey. So if there's areas that we haven't surveyed before and we see sightings pop up, that can be somewhere we add to the survey next year. So it is really useful. So please, if you do have any records for Northern Ireland, send them our way. Also, just want to reference the difference between our presence absence and the sightings. These are two very different ways of collecting data, but they do kind of match up, which is nice to see, because ours is more based on a long-term study, whereas sightings is kind of, it's just a snapshot of someone seeing that squirrel there once. It could be on the move. So the reason why we need both is just to establish, is this an established population of reds or greys, or is this something moving through? So both are very, very important, and they kind of collate and they coincide with each other. So that's nice. We've also had a bit of an increase in photos like this coming in, which is just lovely. This is people seeing red squirrels in their gardens. So it's just so nice to see. It's not something that, is that common, but there's been more and more of people having red squirrels come into their feeders. So that's just lovely and something we would love to see more of, and what a lovely thing to have in your garden. So yeah, hopefully this continues. We have some sighting signs up. So this has been funded through Power NI. They gave us some money towards our species work last year and this year. So we created these signs, we put them up on our nature reserves and on some other key sites and some council sites, which is really good. So this is basically for people when they're out on a walk, they can just scan this and put the record in when they're there. So it's been very useful. So we still have about 10 more signs to go up. So we're going to get these out soon, and yeah, hopefully get more records in. So the squirrel groups are still about 14 squirrel groups across the country. They have just been doing amazing things. It's an amazing resource to have for red squirrels because they're kind of spread across the country, and each of them do lots of things in their local area. So just thank you to them for just doing wonderful things for squirrels. Some are more active than others, and some do different things than others, but that's fine. That's how it works. So the challenges with groups like this is usually getting new recruits. So sometimes they struggle to get new recruits and to get funding. So yeah, if there's anyone that wants to join a squirrel group, I'll put the link in the chat after as well. And even if you give a couple hours of your time, it's really, really helpful to these groups. We were able to donate some of those squirrel feeders you saw being made there, and this is the Northwest Red Squirrel Group up in Derry, Londonderry. So we usually try and donate feeders or traps or batteries and things when we can to support the groups. So we've been doing so many things. That's really a snapshot of it. I haven't even gone into a load of the other things we're doing. So we're still creating our planting and felling guidance for Northern Ireland. We're still providing our Lancashire training on grey squirrel management, and a whole host of other things. And it was really good to be able to get over to London in the summer. Myself and my colleague Ross attended the UK Squirrel Accord conference and spoke on pine marten, but it was a really good way to collaborate. And yeah, we still enjoy doing that. And that's me. That was quite quick. But yeah, thank you for listening. Our emails are there, and that's the QR code for sightings, and that's a little squirrel in one of our nature reserves in the Bluebills. And that's me.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Katie. And I'm really enjoying those sighting signs. They're a really good idea.
Yeah, they're good. It's really nice because we can track where they're coming from too, So yeah, and we've tried to put them in places with lots of footfall. It's good.
Brilliant. I think if we can all come back and put our cameras on, that would be great. And we'll go into the Q&A session. I know a few of the questions have been answered online, but I'm just going to go through them just in case it benefits everybody else to hear them. So the first one's for Becky. There are a couple about Clochynog, and if you think the decline of reds and the sightings of pine martens might be linked, and is there any evidence of squirrels, either grey or red, in the pine marten diets at Clochynog?
Yes, so the diet has yet to be studied, particularly for those. There's very few pine marten in the forest. We think there's maybe 2 maximum, but it's not that large an area. So we haven't done any dietary analysis on the scat yet, but that could well be something that we do. We know that predation does or has taken place in the forest. So during one of the releases that we did back with the Red Squirrels United project, we did radio tracking. So the squirrels had collars on. So in particular, we've got direct evidence that one was predated by goshawk. And we actually found carcass in a nest. We extracted the nest sort of under license and got the contents, and we knew that red squirrel had been predated by goshawk on that occasion. And another squirrel that we tracked with the tracking equipment was found deceased, and there were bite marks, tooth marks on the rubber ring around the neck. So whilst we can't say exactly what the predator was, there was some thoughts around that it could possibly have been pine marten back then. So what was the first part of the question? Sorry, that was the last part.
If you think the decline of reds and the sightings of pine martens might be linked.
Okay, yeah. So I think the decline in reds took place many years ago, before pine marten were back in Wales. So I think that decline in Clochynog is we couldn't directly relate that to pine marten. But as I say, we don't really know what. There was no records of squirrel pox in dead red squirrels, but there wasn't that much monitoring going on back then, really. So it's a little bit of an unknown, which is why we're sort of looking at different avenues, such as the stable isotope analysis, to look at their diet and just check that there is sufficient food for them.
Yeah. And are there any published papers on the DNA work in Wales?
Yes, there is. It was done in an NRW evidence format. So I did see Judy's comment. I've sent it to her. If anyone else wants it, they can let us know, or through UK or something, we can get that to them.
So there's no link, but they can ask you for it.
Yeah, I mean, it is published, so it should be out in the libraries, but I'm not entirely sure how you would access that. But we certainly it is published out there, but we can send a direct copy.
Okay, so just they can get in touch with me or get in touch with you.
Yeah.
There was somebody who asked, does recreation in the vicinity of red squirrels impact them? And if so, how can we mitigate against that? So that's kind of recreation activities. It's a general question.
Yeah, so I did see that come in. I think it was during my 20 minutes. So I'll just kick off. I'm sure that people can pitch in as well. So I know within Clochainog Forest and also Mid Wales, we do, because they're working forests and they're open forests, it's Welsh Government woodland estates. So there's all manner of things going on in these forests. We have to sort of, it's a bit of a balancing act, juggling balls and so on, as to, how to look after the red squirrels. But so, for example, rallies take place, would you believe, in these forests. I'm not particularly a rally person, but I know they're very popular and they do bring income into the local region, which has to be a consideration. But from what we know, the animals will just move away. If there's a big disturbance like that kind of happens all of a sudden, they'll move away. So it's really unlikely that they might be hit by the traffic, for example. That's a bit of evidence. And then certainly in Mid Wales, there was somebody who was very intently monitoring red squirrels, and they were seeing them coming into some feeders. Then a rally took place and it took them weeks to come back, but they did come back. So perhaps some temporary effects might be happening. Yeah,
I suppose as long as they've got somewhere they can escape to.
Yeah. I think that's the thoughts. I don't know if anyone else has got any evidence on recreation in these situations.
No, I think that's a great answer. Thanks, Becky. This question around, will the red squirrels finally become immune to the pox?
I've got one. I don't know if that was for me, but something that I could say. I don't know that. We haven't got any evidence really that that's likely to happen or is happening at the moment. But there was one story back at 2008. There was pox hit the Southport population and wiped out sort of 80-90%, almost completely wiped them out. There was one red squirrel that was captured and taken into the vets, and it was treated and it did survive from the pox. But that was like one animal amongst however many are dying or did die from squirrel pox. So I just don't think that it's going to happen soon enough, if it's going to happen at all. And I think there is some calls for a vaccination, smallpox vaccination. So there's some rumblings going on that might be starting to be looked at, which could be useful in certain situations.
Yeah, I think there's a feasibility study being carried out by Welsh Government, I think, through the petition. Yeah. But yes, I haven't heard of any evidence of immunity and long-term immunity in animals. I don't know whether anyone else has. No. There was a question that I quickly answered, but it just said, Casrod said, I will be involved in a stewardship higher tier agreement and parties to manage grey squirrels. And what suggestions do you have? My suggestions would be, if you're anywhere near a red squirrel community group or a squirrel community group, do try and contact them and link up with them, because they're always looking for landowners to work with to improve grey squirrel management in those areas. And there's a really useful document from Forest Research, but it was made in conjunction with all the different forest agencies in the different 4 countries. And I'll put it in the chat, but it's Controlling Grey Squirrels in Forests and Woodlands in the UK, and it's a UK Forestry Standard technical note. And it's got lots of information there about different strategies and methods and collaborating. So I'd definitely say that's a good kind of go-to document. Don't know whether anyone else would have any other recommendations, but
I think that's in England based, isn't it? The tier system. So it's
the tier system is, but I think if you're thinking about managing grey squirrels in your woods, because it was done across the different 4 countries, I think that's a really useful document to kind of go to. For a start, to think about, whether you're managing for the trees issues or the red squirrel issues and what methods you can use, and and it's a really useful document. Molly, there's a question for you. Graphs of occupancy trends over time from squirrel surveys. Would it be possible to display the trend regression lines on the charts rather than point to point, as in the 2022 survey? 2024 survey.
Yeah, so I've made a note of that, and I will go back to RSNE and see if it's possible to put that in their full report. That was sort of limited data that was provided just for this update. So we'll see what they can do for the final report.
Brilliant, thank you. How can we get local council involved in grey squirrel management, as the greys are on council sites in Derry? That's over to you, Katie.
Yeah. I think that's from Pam. Hello, Pam. So you'll be pleased to know that there is a new biodiversity officer in the Derry Strabane Council, and one of the things we've been doing is trying to encourage all of the biodiversity officers and council employees to undertake the Lantern training. Now we're getting better at that. There's like more and more have come in the last couple of years, but I'm running a course in a couple of weeks, and the new biodiversity officer for Derry and Strabane will be on the Lantern course. So that's a start. And then so that's a start of that conversation, and then we can see where we go from there.
That's fantastic, Katie. It's all about building those positive relationships, isn't it? So yeah. A couple of questions again for Becky. Are the squirrels pit tagged, and are you doing walked transects? I'm not quite sure which bit to mention about that first.
Yeah. So with the release scheme, the reinforcement scheme, the more recent animals were pit tagged. That's something that the breeders will do before releasing the animals to projects, and it then helps us to sort of, following IUCN guidelines, making sure that we keep track of those squirrels for as long as we can, really, to be able to identify how successful it's been, or what threats there might be against those released red squirrels. So yes, they are chipped. And you may remember the photo I showed of that remote frequency identification unit. So it's a black feeder box, and it's got a unit in it. So as the squirrel lifts the lid, the chip in the back of the neck is red. So the local squirrel group are able to monitor those squirrels. So yes, they are pit tagged. Transects. So in Mid Wales and Caerkynog, the local red squirrel groups, they have sort of blocks of cameras, if you like, 5 to 10 in a certain block, and there'll be a volunteer assigned to that block, and they will go and monitor them. So it's not strictly a transect. But when we had Bangor University undertake the abundance and habitat modelling work, they for Anglesey and for Caerkynog, and then we're shortly going to be doing Mid Wales, those were looking at randomised locations to put feeder boxes and cameras, because we're working in very low density red squirrel population situations here, and also in woodland, like Caerkynog is 69% Sitka spruce, so it's really, really dense, impenetrable, really. So you do have to take into consideration the land and the landscape, and how you can actually go and do this monitoring. So really, at the moment, that's how it's done.
Brilliant, thanks, Becky. A question from Molly. When referring to the survey tetrads, is that just camera trapping and feeders?
So yeah, it's mixed methods. So the RSNE have got a standard methodology for everybody to follow. So some of the woodlands will be transects and just visual transects. Some of them will have hair tubes in them and they'll be baited. And then some of them will also have cameras and they'll be baited as well. For the Lancashire and Merseyside area, we don't provide the camera data, but we do the visual transects and the hair tubes, but it will vary depending on the area.
Brilliant, thanks, Molly. And just another question about the RSRN grant scheme and if it includes work to encourage and monitor pine martens.
Yeah, so there is work being done as part of the actual recovery network, looking at sort of gaining some insight, especially in the borders area on pine marten occupancy and sort of how they're interacting with the communities. Specifically for the grant scheme, I'm going to defer that to Mike because he's not here. So I'm going to say if you just email the Red Squirrel Recovery Network email address that was on that slide, I'll pop it into the chat so everybody's got it. Yeah, just you can get a bit more information about pine martens from there.
Brilliant, thanks, Molly. A question for Katie. Have you considered signing up with Mammal Web to upload images as they use citizen science and AI to identify species?
No, we haven't yet. I think I need to look into it and have a conversation with them because I feel like we might have too many photos to send them, but because there's like almost like over 100,000, images come out of our survey. So, but I could ask, maybe they could do some of it and I could try. Also, thank you for the suggestion.
Thanks, Katie. There's just a comment about encouraging the public to make sure they keep their dogs on leads. Oh, that's a good point. There's a question, is the chip reader for feeders available to red squirrel groups?
So, I don't know. When we started the reinforcement and knew we were going to be using sort of chipped red squirrels that were chipped, this was one way of monitoring them. So obviously, a wild squirrel wouldn't be chipped, so these readers obviously wouldn't be of use in that situation. But if you're thinking of chipping red squirrels as a way to sort of monitor and keep tags on squirrels, obviously all of that has to be done completely under license. We do work with Dr. Craig Shuttleworth here in Wales, who is licensed to do that if red squirrels are trapped, and we would like to chip them. I can't off the top of my head remember where we got them from. There was a person who made them, and I will need to dig back my records to find his name. He's just a sort of a one-person band, if you like, who was making these feeder boxes. But yeah, if you need to know for sure, I can try and dig that information out.
Okay, thanks, Becky. So maybe, yes, follow up with Becky or follow up with me and I'll follow up with Becky. Great. Yes, useful bit of kit, definitely. Pine martens are increasingly likely to turn up in squirrel traps in the south of Scotland and the north of England. Do squirrel rangers and volunteer groups need training for this?
Can I jump in on that one?
Yeah, I was going to say this is for everyone. So
it's not my area, but yes, this is an important point. So we include pine marten issue in our Lantra training now. We feel like anyone that's getting that training should have training about how to let a pine marten out of a trap. Because it is quite important. So a couple of things we will say to people is, one, you use a trap comb so you don't lose a finger. And the other thing is let the pine marten, open the trap and walk away. Because we've seen lots of people like videoing pine martens. They're excited they get a pine marten, but they need to get out of the trap. They can injure themselves and things. And there are ways that you can kind of decrease the chance of getting certain species. So, putting the trap up high rather than on the ground. But yeah, this will become more common and people definitely need to be aware of what to do when they catch a pine marten.
Yeah, and pine martens spreading out so many different areas now, and it's really important then to be, if they are in your area, to be using live traps as well, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. I mean, we only use live traps in Northern Ireland,
Yeah.
but there obviously are some places where people think, if there's grey only, they use other traps. So it's just really something to be aware of that to move to live trapping if you think there's any chance of having reds or pie martins in that area.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if anyone else had any comments on the pine marten. Gail, up in Scotland, because you've got lots of pine martens as well.
We do, yes. And yeah, in increasing numbers from observations. Yeah, so all our staff and volunteers are trained in the use of live traps. However, we can never say that we know it all. So yeah, thank you, Roland. I think that'd be valuable. We never stop learning.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I think that might be all of questions. I don't know whether you want to just say a last few final words. Anybody, any of our panel? Anyone want to sign off?
Just could everyone share all the nice things coming out for Red Squirrel Awareness Week, because we're sharing lots of media and things and we want to try and get more sightings this week. So yeah, please share everything you see about a squirrel.
Brilliant. Thanks, Katie. Gail?
Yeah, I think that goes across the board. Yeah, records of sightings are so valuable for all of us in terms of identifying where to focus our efforts. It also helps us identify success stories as well that we can share with everyone. So yeah, thank you everybody for all the hard work so far.
Thanks, Gail. Molly?
Yeah, just again, yeah, we get quite a few questions, particularly in areas where people expect to see red squirrels. They assume that they don't need to report sightings of reds because we know that they're there. So yeah, just to third that, please submit sightings and share it with as many people as possible. And yeah, do get in touch if you want any more information about the recovery network.
Brilliant, thanks, Molly. And Becky?
Yeah, I would say the same. I mean, Red Squirrels Trust Wales and Clerkenwell Red Squirrels Trust are now getting more and more sighting records, which is fantastic. So if anyone's on here from Wales, then do get those records in. And I was just looking at there was one final comment, I think, on the chat for somebody based down at Denmark Farm. So yeah, that's definitely worth the conversation. If I think it's from Tim Draper, if you can get in touch with me, we can have a chat. Be great. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Becky. Yeah, definitely sightings data is so very important, and one of the easy ways that everybody can get involved with red squirrel conservation, definitely. Well, thanks very much for joining us today, and big thanks to all our wonderful presenters. I hope you agree that there's some great work going on to help our red squirrels survive and thrive. A recording of this webinar will be made available on our YouTube channel, and we are organising a series of autumn-winter webinars to share sessions held at our anniversary conference in June that Katie mentioned, for anyone that missed them. But have an excellent last few days of this Red Squirrel Awareness Week. Report your sightings, and goodbye for now. Bye.